Welcome to the Cover 2, episode 69. Nice. Presented by Tigervision. This is Grayson Man. I'm Patrick Neal. As always, we are here. We're talking a little conference championship this week. It happened a few days ago, but we can still talk about it. And we're also gonna go over the coaching hires as well. So, Grayson, conference championship weekend happened. What was your feelings, your emotions, your just overall sentiment towards conference championship weekend?
I really enjoyed it. I thought that we got the four best teams, felt like all year. Ravens, top team in the AFC. Chiefs with Mahomes, you can never truly count him out. The Lions with MCDC, one of the more consistent teams in the NFC. And then San Francisco, we've talked about them a ton on this show. Very impressed with them. And we have our Super Bowl. I know people think it's the boring matchup, but I think Mahomes in a Super Bowl, you have the Taylor Swift thing, and then you have the young gun, Brock Purdy, making his first Super Bowl appearance.
Yeah, I don't know. I personally would have enjoyed not seeing, I'm going to say this with the asterisk that Patrick Mahomes is by far the best quarterback in this league and the best player in this league, but it would have been kind of cool to see a different matchup. Ultimately, I guess I'm okay with seeing Mahomes in the Super Bowl because it's Patrick Mahomes. But I mean, we have to talk about how this is probably the worst team he's had, at least on the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah, by far.
Yet it doesn't matter. This is the kind of stuff that everybody wanted to compare Mahomes to Brady, but I think it's really getting to that point in his career where not only does he have the talent to back up that argument, but he's getting to the point where he has that resume as well. He's made the conference championship every single year he's been a starter. He's gotten the Super Bowl 4 out of the 6 times, I believe, and has 2 Super Bowls already. At this point, Mahomes, I think, has already cemented himself as top 3 QB potentially of all time.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, if you got a Mount Rushmore of quarterbacks, Mahomes, I think, if we were to chart out the rest of his career, he'd have to be on there at some point. And the thing that really stuck out to me, I guess we'll start with the Chiefs and the Ravens, we'll go in chronological order, is those first 2 drives. And it was the first drive that they had. They went down the field, 7-minute drive, touchdown. It felt like, okay, this is what we always say this is what championship teams do. We talk about dynastic qualities. The Chiefs have all of them. And in a game where the Ravens essentially melted down as the stage and the moment got bigger, whether it was a Zay Flowers penalty, a roughing the passer penalty on Patrick Mahomes where he basically decked him. Just things here and there. Lamar Jackson throwing interception to triple coverage, something you shouldn't be doing at this point in his career. It felt like, okay, the Chiefs have been there, done that, and the Ravens just fell short of the moment. And I was super impressed with how the Chiefs came out. Although they only scored 17 points, it almost felt like throughout the game, they were just playing the don't make the mistake strategy because they felt like they didn't respect the Ravens offense. They said, hey, we're going to lock them up. They're over there melting and falling apart. Mahomes, just don't lose this for us. And for him, that's pretty easy.
Yeah, they dominated the time of possession. They almost had double the amount of time that the Ravens had. And yeah, you mentioned this game, both teams score somewhat early on. And you're like, wow, could this be, one of the best conference championship games of all time? And after that, instantly it was like, all right, we're done scoring for today. The Chiefs only scored 10 more points. The Ravens only scored 3 more. I really did think, This is a side argument, but who was at fault for the Justin Tucker, Kelsey, Mahomes incident? Who stepped on whose turf?
I don't know, because I've seen Tucker warm up there pretty much the entire season, so he's just kind of in his own groove. And I felt like the players, I felt like the media and Twitter drove it more to be of a conflict than it probably was, because Tucker and Kelsey are joking about it after the game. You just saw Mahomes go on the Pat McAfee show today, and there's like, yo, Justin Tucker almost kicked your you-know-what type thing as a joke. So I guess maybe it's a little overplayed, but It looks like even if the Chiefs instigated it, they finished the fight. So.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of like when you have wars. I'm gonna try and explain this.
Okay.
How I thought about it. When whoever is winning wars, whoever wins in battles and stuff like that, they ultimately get to write history. And so, I feel like there was, I believe, Travis Kelce on his podcast with his brother comes out and is saying all this stuff about how you can't poke the bear if you're Justin Tucker, and if the Ravens win this game, maybe it's the opposite. Justin Tucker is going on Instagram Live and talking about how you can't poke the greatest kicker of all time.
That's right. Don't mess with him.
Yeah, I guess ultimately, because the Chiefs won, it was on Justin Tucker to not intrude, even though I'm sure he's practicing on both sides just because of the wind, see how the conditions change. But regardless,
there was that we talk about the Ravens just as a whole, like the big moment. You have the Zay Flowers taunting penalty.
Yep.
And so Lamar makes a big play, and it felt like we were waiting for it the entire game. And then the Zay Flowers penalty happens, they drive back, and then 3 plays later, Zay Flowers that fumble. Even though it felt like they got back to the same spot, the penalty didn't matter. It felt like maybe that fumble wasn't going to happen. Let's say the play moves on, Lamar's trying to get things sped up, catch the Chiefs defense off guard. They finally got a big play, and boom, something happens. I know he's a rookie, but at that same time, it's like, hey, you've been in the NFL long enough. This isn't your first playoff game, rather. You got to keep the emotions in check.
Yeah, I mean, Zay Flowers is going to get remembered mostly for that catch, the subsequent penalty, and then the subsequent fumble after that. But you also got to, keep in context, he was the leading yard, he led this Ravens team in yards when they were playing. He was, Odell had a few catches towards the end of the game, but for the most part, it was all Zay Flowers. And Lamar Jackson, he had that fantastic first touchdown. And I want to get your thoughts on this as well, because I don't think Lamar, he didn't necessarily have a great game, but I think there were still moments where it was obvious, the quality of player he is. But also, I think it's even more difficult now at this point for him to shake this. He doesn't do well in the playoffs narrative, because he's now played 6 playoff games. He's 2-4, and he has a 6 touchdown to 6 interception ratio. So, what are your thoughts on how this affects people's perception of Lamar Jackson?
Well, I felt like for the Ravens, this was the year for them to potentially make that jump to the Super Bowl, because, like we said, this is the weakest Chiefs offense. Despite how brilliant they've been on the defensive side, eventually we thought, okay, if you get the right quarterback to face off against that defense, and Allen had success with that Chiefs defense the prior week, I feel like this was the year for the Ravens, number 1 seed. That has come through Baltimore, has come through M&T Bank Stadium, and they get the imposing win over Houston, and you feel, okay, this is not the same Ravens team. You get the feeling that whether that Houston roster was overmatched or not against the Ravens that week. And so they come in, Kansas City's offense felt dead on arrival in certain situations, and so now he's 2-4 in the playoffs. It'll be another year where he's won the MVP and gone out in disappointing fashion, as if we're all led to believe the honors will be correct with him getting his second MVP. It feels like Peyton Manning. Regular season, unbelievable quarterback, MVPs, and just short of the Super Bowl and what many expect him to be as a consistently. He performs well in the regular season. In the playoffs, the play just dramatically dips.
Yeah, I feel like we keep making this comparison with Brady and Peyton Manning, but it's Mahomes and every other AFC QB. Yeah. It was Joe Burrow a few years ago. Then it was Josh Allen. And now it's Lamar Jackson. It's just this. It just kind of shows how good Mahomes is, and how basically he has. He may end up just deleting any worthy accomplishments that any of the other AFC QBs get while he's in the league, because he's Thanos. He's inevitable.
He snaps his fingers, man, and it's a crazy. I think especially because early in Mahomes' career it was about, okay, here's probably we all assume to be the next great of our generation, and he's just short of beating the current great, which was Tom Brady, 2018 AFC Championship game, the Super Bowl in 2020. But now it's really his league, and besides the 1 year with Joe Burrow and the Bengals, it's been pure dominance from the Chiefs on the, at least on the AFC front, and the Super Bowl success is TBD with the 49ers. But this Chiefs team, I just want to add the one note before this Chiefs team reminds me a lot of the last Super Bowl winning Patriots team. It's a offense that was incredibly weak at points in that season. Gronk was on his last legs. Edelman was getting to the closing stages of his career. A lot of people were writing them off, as a lot of people wrote the Chiefs off this playoff run. And you just see them do what they do great, which is just perform well in big games. They had to travel on the road to beat the 1 seed in the AFC Championship game, and they'll play a creative, dynamic offense in the Super Bowl. And we'll see if the defense holds up like New England's did. But I'm not betting against Mahomes again, Patrick.
Yeah, I think a lot of people have decided they can't do that anymore. Side note, why doesn't Steve Spagnuolo get more head coaching looks? Does he just not want it? Because he's been a fantastic defensive coordinator for years.
I think in part, I don't know where his first run was specifically, but things that I've listened to and read is that it didn't go very well, and now it's just, hey, I'm being paid pretty nice salary to be the defensive coordinator on a Super Bowl team. I might as well just stick it out here.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it's kind of like, and we'll talk about this in a little bit, but it's like Ben Johnson who decided to stay, and yeah, maybe Spagnuolo's like, I enjoy, being on a competitive team in the Chiefs every year. This team has great players. I get to help put them in a position to win Super Bowls, and yeah, I get to be part of.
It's getting a ton of credit this year too.
Yeah, exactly. This defense has been fantastic, and it was fantastic on Sunday as well. Side note, also Kyle Hamilton may just be like a future Hall of Famer.
Oh yeah, that guy was flying around.
He was fantastic.
A lot of great open field tackles.
Yeah.
Something we don't really see often anymore, I don't think.
But we can talk NFC Championship now as well. So the 49ers beat the Lions 34-31. This comes after the Lions in the first half were running away with it. It did not seem close. The 49ers, they couldn't do anything right. It was, Brock Purdy was not playing great, kind of similarly to how he played in Green Bay. But, second half, they had us in the first half, not going to lie. And, yeah, the 49ers come out. The Lions just repeatedly keep shooting themselves in the foot with the Jahmyr Gibbs fumble, 2 failed fourth down conversions. The Ayuk catch that, should have been picked off, and the punt as well where it ended up as a touchback. But it was a dot and should have been caught on like the 1-inch line.
Yeah, that was and I feel bad for saying this because Detroit's been such a story we've watched all year, is we fell in love with the way Dan Campbell has coached all year, which is it's the most insane form I've ever seen. Like fake punts on your own 15, going for it on like 4th and 10 in certain positions, certain territories. And so when the situation arose, and this is why I have such a problem with it, is that in the first half, the end of the first half, they're up 24-10, and they had a decision, or they're up 24-7. They had to do 21-7, excuse me. They had a decision to either go for it and make it 28-7, or kick the field goal, make it 3 possessions at halftime. And Campbell opted for the points in a 4th and 3 situation. I thought, okay, maybe we're going to shy away from the aggressiveness when you're up on the road, be up 3 scores, read the room. And then he has that same situation presented to him again, and he chooses to go for it instead of making it 27-10, where it would have been 3 possessions again. You nullify the 49ers opening drive. It felt like, oh man, like the inconsistency there is what bothered me.
See, yeah,
that's where I understand why he did it.
Yeah,
but
the thing is also like Josh Reynolds. That was going to be
right, yeah.
a first down. It was right in Josh Reynolds' hands, and he just dropped it. So, yeah, I guess that's one way to look at it. But I think for the most part, Campbell was pretty consistent in being aggressive. Obviously, yeah, he decided to take the points in the first half, but Man, I don't know. I think he was pretty consistent for the most part, and like I really don't fault him for it at all.
I mean, it is who he is,
Yeah.
and I won't say that I'm not. I don't have to agree with it, but I also understand that's who Dan Campbell has built his DNA around. If the Detroit head coach is just not only the fact that he started his career bordering on insanity, his coaching reflects that sometimes with the way he goes for it, takes chances, and it's unorthodox. And I think we've all fallen in love with it. The city of Detroit certainly has. So I wasn't surprised and was like, oh, I can't believe he would go for it. It's just like, with that first half decision in the back of my mind, it was, okay, where was the decision, where was the gap in decision making, is what I was personally feeling.
Yeah, and that's a fair point. Dan Campbell and Detroit's decision making, I think, were put kind of on blast with this game, but I really don't. I didn't really have much of an issue with any of his decisions. I will say, Jared Goff was not the issue in this game, and I think while he's not the upper tier QB, I think this season, maybe it's Ben Johnson who they're going to keep at this point, so it should still work all right. But Jared Goff was not really the issue in any of these games. Again, it may have been because they were playing indoors, not outdoors, and he's historically struggled with outdoor games, especially when the conditions have been bad. But yeah, Jared Goff was putting his team in positions, putting his receivers, his weapons in position to make plays. And can Jared Goff win a Super Bowl? I don't know. He's gotten pretty close multiple times now. But yeah, I think this is it was an opportunity for Jared Goff to kind of validate a lot of when he was traded from the Rams to Detroit, he was basically written off as he's going to an organization that has not been successful in years. It's not going to go well, but this team has really turned around, and it's one of the best cultures in the NFL at this point. And yeah, I think everybody just enjoys playing with each other.
Absolutely, and I think we could potentially see the Lions as a destination for free agents, depending on the salary cap, the way they've built the culture, the way everyone reveres around what Campbell has built in terms of. I think the first season obviously didn't go the way you expected, but you could tell that they were fighting for their coach and that things would get turned around eventually. And you've seen this natural progression. And for them to get this far in the playoffs, they beat the Matthew Stafford Rams, who I felt were one of the hotter teams in the NFL at the time.
Oh, yeah.
They beat a Buccaneers team with Baker Mayfield that was writing their own success story. And then you're inches short of a game against San Francisco that may win the Super Bowl. And so it's motivation for this team moving forward. I think that the Lions aren't going anywhere specifically, especially now that Ben Johnson's returning. The offense should pick up right where it left off. Laporta, Gibbs, some of their weapons, Amon-Ra, they will only continue to get better. Goff, I think he's a top 10 quarterback in the NFL. I don't think that's a hot take. Now, I don't think he's top 5. He's probably more of the 8, 9, maybe 10. But certainly you've got your franchise guy for a long time, and they're not paying him a ton in terms of the higher echelon of quarterbacks.
He is due an extension soon, I believe.
Yes.
And that's another conversation where I don't think you pay him top tier QB money. I think he's a quality QB. I don't think he's somebody that deserves, like I mentioned, top tier money. I don't know if he's quite top 10 in my personal opinion. That would have to be something where I go through and look at each individual QB, but he's around the 10 to 15 range, I think, in my mind. And
we'll do an episode where we list it because we're going to need some stuff in March.
we can do that. But Detroit, if they believe that they can get back to this position with Jared Goff, sure, go ahead and give him the extension. But I think they should also be consciously looking at, hey, there is an opportunity. Like, if there is an opportunity for Detroit to upgrade at QB, I think they should be looking for that as well.
Okay. I guess it depends on where are you thinking in terms of a free agency or a trade?
Yeah,
or?
I mean, like the situation last year with Lamar Jackson, and now objectively seeing that Lamar Jackson, kind of was not great in the playoffs, but he's most likely about to win his second MVP. So Lamar Jackson, I think, is definitely an upgrade over Jared Goff. And so if there's a situation like that arises, I don't know why Detroit wouldn't look into that.
The thing for me about when we're talking about extension is, I think quarterbacks like Daniel Jones, for example, where he's making $40 million a year. Now, I know the first two, it's a very front-loaded contract, but the number is what most pay attention to. Is there's Goff, is he a $45 million quarterback? Is he a $50 million quarterback? I think Detroit's going to have to make a decision, but I don't think Goff didn't do himself any. I think he did himself plenty of favors with his playoff performance.
Sure.
Didn't make any careless errors. I think it was 1 interception in 3 games, if I'm not mistaken. And 24-7 lead on the road, where it's not where everyone's Jared Goff threw 2 interceptions and the Niners came back. It was Brock Purdy played pretty excellent in the second half. 4th down, it was a 50-50. It's a coin flip at that point, and saying, hey, we are 3 points away from a Super Bowl potentially, or a no Jahmyr Gibbs fumble, or this. There's so many what ifs there with that game. So I think for Detroit, it would probably be maybe like not a 4 or 5 year deal, maybe 3, and you make it team option if you don't fully believe in him. But I think the way that Goff's embraced the city, the way that they've embraced him, I don't think he's going anywhere for a long time.
Yeah, I think he probably does end up getting an extension. So, do I say Super Bowl preview? We could probably save for next week.
Yeah.
Do we want to talk about coaching hires?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's roll into it.
How about let's try and give each coaching hire grade. We've done something similar in the past.
We'll do a lightning round because there's a lot.
Okay, so the most recent hire.
Yep.
Mike McDonald, he's leaving the Ravens. He's going to the Seahawks. What's the grade you give him?
I think B. I think the Ravens defense is really, and I think Seattle. I'm also taking into account the roster and what each team has into the coaching hire. So, like example, if Bill Belichick went to Washington, it'd be like, ooh, it's a weird fit, defensive guy. Roster's kind of all over the place. I don't know, but Mike McDonald, an established coordinator with the Ravens, really successful this year. That defense was flying around, really improved defense. Goes into Seattle with a lot of interesting pieces. I think it goes without saying for all the defensive hires, if you can get the OC right and you get the QB right, it's like DeMeco Ryans in Houston. So I think Seattle's got enough pieces to where if they have structure, I think they're looking something similar to Pete Carroll, but just decades younger.
Why?
So you got that.
Why only a B then?
I think it's a shame they lost out on Ben Johnson and who's on the market. I know that their options started to get limited as hires continue to progress. They weren't getting a Jim Harbaugh. They weren't going to get a Raheem Morris. But I think B, it's just defensively, I'm always not sure how it works out.
Fair enough. I personally think they knocked this out of the park.
Okay.
I gave them an A+.
Okay, cool.
Because, yes, the league is all moving towards the McVay-Shanahan tree, get a young offensive play caller in. But Mike McDonald had one of the best defenses in the past 20 to 25 years.
Yeah.
And there's pieces on this defense. There's Devon Witherspoon. There's Tariq Woolen. There's, Uchenna Nwosu. There's a decent amount of guys, and I think he has, a lot of pieces to work with. He becomes the youngest coach in the NFL, and, while that inexperience could be a little rough at first, I think it's only going to be an opportunity for him to grow, him to learn. And, there's a lot of room to learn quickly, I think, becoming a head coach. Pete Carroll is still there in the building. So
will he be like an operations guy?
I'm not sure. I'm not quite sure on that dynamic, how much Pete Carroll's going to be involved. But he's been a successful coach, been a successful defensive coach for a long time. So, again, that's another opportunity for Mike McDonald to learn. And I just think he comes from, the Ravens, an organization that is very well built. They're, a very stable organization. I think he's going to get the right guys in, for all his positions. And I think, I just think it's a fantastic hire by them.
I think you could convince me to bump the grade up based off of your explanation. Which one next?
How about Antonio Pierce? Staying with the Raiders.
I'm going to give the Raiders a B+ for learning from their mistakes, because I think they had Rich Bisaccia, led them to the playoffs amidst the John Gruden scrutiny, the Henry Ruggs incident. There was so much that Rich Bisaccia did so well in galvanizing that team that wasn't roster-wise perfectly built. They make it to the playoffs, especially off of a weird could have tied it scenario. They were close to beating the Bengals on the road. And so I was like, if they have another situation like this again, they better not screw it up. Antonio Pierce, the Raiders team clearly looked better with an inferior roster in certain areas. The players clearly love him. Max Crosby, I think, went out and said if they don't hire him, I'm requesting a trade.
Exactly.
So the Raiders, I think, just purely based off of they found another gem in an interim head coaching hire, and they decided to stick with it this time. I get a B plus is a solid grade.
I'm gonna give them a B just
Okay.
because I mean similar reasoning. I think, yeah, the players were vouching for him, and keeping your superstars happy, Max Crosby, Devontae Adams, that's important. So the fact that they did that, I think was a good decision. Is Antonio Pierce, the newest, bright head coaching mind that has all these new ideas is going to change football forever? No, probably not.
Probably not.
And it's also the Raiders who are in a kind of difficult situation. What direction do they want to go? Are they going to draft a QB? Are they going to sign somebody? I think that's kind of the more important issue is, what direction do they want to go? Because they have, some superstars like we mentioned, but it's also not a perfect roster. So I think B for kind of staying firm, holding still, not necessarily messing up the hire. I just, Antonio Pierce, I don't think is the greatest head coaching hire of all time. But that's not to say that this was a bad hire. I think it's a pretty solid
Okay.
one, given the circumstances. How about your New England Patriots?
Okay.
Gerard Mayo.
So this grade actually might shock you, and just because it felt there's a lot of pros and cons, and there's a lot of hesitancy. I was leaning between B minus C plus range.
Okay.
And what I really love about it is they had the succession plan ready to go, especially amidst the turmoil that was the final year of Bill Belichick. So we got our guy, younger, bright ideas, really led a strong defense the last couple of years. They've really been the reason why New England wins games. And the offense was horrific this year. I think there was a stretch where they averaged single-digit points per game.
Mm-hmm.
That bad. So he comes in, and his top message in his introductory press conference was, "I'm not Bill Belichick. Things will not be run that way." And I was just like, thank you. Like, finally, some new change. And so I was like, I don't want to feel like I'm getting too caught up in the Kool-Aid of the new coach. And I want to see how he builds his staff. And so far, it's been a mixed result. But we'll just have to wait and see. I think I'm excited that it's a player it's a coach that the players really respect, similar to Antonio Pierce. But I don't think he's one of these revolutionary football minds. So I was really torn on a grade.
Yeah, I put a B again, kind of similar. Again, similar situation to Antonio Pierce. Already on the staff, just kind of assumes that role, takes over the role of the head coach. It's going to be tough to follow up, potentially the greatest coach of all time. So, again, like you mentioned, got to kind of wait and see here. But it's a coach that I think the players respect. I think, he seems to be saying all the right things, has a good personality behind him. I think it'll be decent hire. But
I mean, he was joking at the press conference.
yeah,
It was the
exactly.
last time
That's
we've
never
seen
happened.
Yeah.
In the Patriots. But yeah, B for me.
Okay.
All right. How about Raheem Morris with the Falcons?
I give this one an A.
Really?
I think that, and I know it's similar to your point about Mike McDonald, so I may be catching myself here on something, but I think that Rams defense, we did this in August, I believe, right as we got back to school. We did the game of, can we name Rams players on the defense other than Aaron Donald? And we really couldn't. And I think what he was able to do with this defense this year and really complemented the Rams offense with Matthew Stafford as they went on to the playoffs. It's a guy that around the league he's got a lot of respect for. We use that word of respect, especially in 2024, the way things are. But he comes in and they instantly have this plan. They got Zach Robinson to be the OC. There's a structure with Atlanta now. It feels like that's what they needed. There was a little bit of a loose base with Arthur Smith. And everybody that I've talked to that's either a Falcons fan or close to what they closely see the organization on a consistent basis, they're really excited.
Yeah.
And so I think this was someone that I think he could potentially be a mind that Atlanta desperately needs on that side of the ball.
See, I gave him a C+.
Oh, man. Okay, we got some.
I think this is my
back and forth.
least favorite hire
Okay.
of the coaching cycle so far. We're still waiting on the Commanders, but, Raheem Morris has already been a Falcons coach, albeit an interim, when they fired Dan Quinn a few years ago. But I don't know. I think I just saw this as an opportunity for the Falcons to, change directions. And yes, Raheem Morris is a fantastic head coach. All the points you said are valid, but I don't think a lot of Falcons fans are super, excited and moved by this move. I personally don't believe that, just because they've seen how this has gone before. They were okay with Raheem Morris. He wasn't the worst coach ever. He was no Urban Meyer, but wasn't no Andy Reid, anybody else.
Right.
And they decided after the end of that season to not, keep him as their head coach. So now bringing him back is kind of a weird thing that I'm just like, it seems like a bit of indecisiveness with the Falcons. They're not quite sure what they want to do. Because, they had Bill Belichick. I don't know if Bill Belichick, great head coach, is that what the Falcons wanted? In this situation, probably not. But I think, if Zach Robinson, like you mentioned, is able to get a lot out of these weapons that they've spent a lot of capital on, it can be a fantastic hire. Maybe it's me seeing, it's not a new shiny thing. Raheem Morris, being with the Falcons. But I'm just not completely sold yet.
Okay, that's fair. I can see the points that you're making.
But yeah, how about the Titans, Brian Callahan?
I did B.
Okay.
I think
I have that as well.
Offensively, it felt like the most, that's who they hired type of thing, where the job was so under the radar. I was more moved by the news that they moved off of Vrabel than the hiring to replace him. And so Callahan, they worked with the Bengals. You would obviously be very familiar with him. Not running the offense per se, because I guess Zach Taylor would be the one that finalizes everything. So we'll see how it goes. I think that obviously the Bengals offense under Burrow has been pretty fantastic in the last couple of years. They had a couple rough spots here and there this year with Burrow struggling with injuries, but I think if they get the QB right, if he's the guy that can come in and be the Will Levis whisperer, then it'll work out. But it's also just, okay, let's wait and see how much of the offense was Zach Taylor, how much of it was Brian Callahan. This is where we get our answer.
Yeah, I have a B as well, similarly because, like you mentioned, Brian Callahan has been able to do a lot of good things in Cincinnati while he was the offensive coordinator. Again, Zach Taylor was the one calling plays, but he, was able to get a lot, especially when Burrow went down this year, to get a competent offense with Jake Browning. I thought was really, really fantastic job by him and Zach Taylor. But there's also been stretches where the Bengals offense was not great. I think multiple times they've started the season slow last year, and then this previous year, albeit Burrow was not completely healthy. There's been issues with where the running game is not great and not fully connected to the passing game. A lot of just solely shotgun and running out of the shotgun, no play action. So Callahan has done great things with the Bengals, I think, but I think there's also room for improvement. So, this was kind of a hire that I think a lot of people were like, oh, kind of like you mentioned, that was kind of out of nowhere. I didn't expect Brian Callahan to get hired, but look, he's done good things with the Bengals. And I'm going to give him a B. Okay. We got two more, I believe. So Dave Canales with the Panthers.
I'll go quick with this one. I gave this one a C. Just so it felt like that the Panthers were really going to be scraping at the bottom of the barrel for this job. But I think the positive about Dave, and this is probably why they wanted to bring him in, is that he really has transformed the quarterback careers of Geno Smith and Baker Mayfield. He's been a QB whisperer. I just think that, and this is more factoring into the job that the Panthers is. They're just a mess. Yep. And so whether it's an immediate turnaround or we see them win 6 games and they're competitive, it's the central question will be, can he turn around Bryce Young's career? That's yet to be seen. We'll see if he goes 3 for 3 on quarterback renaissances, per se. But the reason I give it a C is just because I think that this job, I don't think is highly desired by the top candidates. I don't think even Belichick, Harbaugh, or any of the big guys interviewed for it. And so it's just, oh man, I hope he makes it work, because I don't see the Panthers being great anytime soon.
Yeah, I gave it a B. Again, I've given a lot of Bs. I'm realizing I should probably diversify a little bit more. But it's ultimately exactly what you said. He has been able to revitalize 2 QB careers now. Bryce Young is only going to be in his second year, so revitalizing is maybe a strong word. But yeah, if he can turn around Bryce Young's career was not great in all honesty this first season, if he can get something out of that, turn this roster that is not great into something. He's got a lot of challenges with David Tepper and the ownership, who objectively has not been the best owner of all time.
The fan that got hit by a cup.
Yeah,
is definitely saying something.
But it all depends. It all depends on the success of Bryce Young. If Bryce Young becomes a good QB, Dave Canales is going to get a lot of credit for that, and yeah, they're going to be successful. If Bryce Young ends up not being very good, Dave Canales is most likely gone. So his success, I think, is fully tied to the success of Bryce Young.
Yeah.
And okay, finally, Chargers hired Jim Harbaugh.
It shouldn't be anything but, and it should be only this, an A+. This was the superstar candidate on the market, and I think he went to the best team possible with all the right pieces. I know that Mike Williams and Keenan Allen are in limbo with their contracts right now, but it really matters to me is that everywhere that Jim Harbaugh has gone, he's a winner. Just won the national championship at Michigan. Really has owned the rivalry with Ohio State the last 3 years. Really turned that around after not being able to do it for his start at Michigan. But the 49ers, he's been successful in the NFL. This isn't one of those college to NFL jumps where we don't know how he's going to work in the pros. He's done it with San Francisco. Turned around a Stanford team with Andrew Luck. I actually don't know if Harbaugh had Luck on that team.
No,
I don't think
he was coaching the 49ers at the time.
Yeah. So I think Harbaugh is going to transform this Chargers team. I don't think it'll be as significant as people think. Maybe they're 9-8 the first year, maybe around that 7 seed, just out of the playoffs mix. But I think he's going to instill change and structure that they desperately lacked under Brandon Staley.
Yeah, he's definitely going to come in and set his culture, set what he wants to have happen. I think the Chargers. This was probably the most enticing job. Maybe the Falcons. I'm not too sure, but the best quarterback at least.
Absolutely.
Best quarterback situation. You don't have to worry about that, which is the most difficult question to answer to get right in the NFL is the quarterback. So, yeah, Jim Harbaugh comes in. I'm gonna give this. I put an A down just because I wanted to say that Mike McDonald was my favorite hire. But
Okay.
I think still fantastic hire. I think he's going to bring a lot of stabilization into this organization, something that Staley didn't quite have.
Staley.
Yeah, but yeah, I just think he's going to do a lot of good things. I think a lot of people are high on this hire. It's just, yeah, he's got to do a lot of roster reconstruction because a lot of players are aging out. They're on expensive contracts. They're pretty thin at every position. And yeah, if he can come in, he's been successful in the NFL before with the 49ers. If he's able to fully take control, do everything his way, I think this can be a successful hire.
Completely agree.
Yeah. So I believe that is all of the coaching hires. So any thoughts on who the Commanders are going to hire? Any predictions?
I don't really. I think Dan Quinn is the current favorite, but after Ben Johnson told them no, I think they're probably in panic mode because they perceived him as the slam dunk hire.
I don't know how great of a hire Dan Quinn would be for the Commanders specifically, but yeah, that's all the ones we got so far. So this was the Cover 2 episode 69. We're gonna cut it off here. Say goodbye. We want to thank Zach and Connor for producing as always. We want to thank Tigervision. We want to thank you for tuning in. And yeah, we'll see you next time. Have a good one.